What a bowling! Scott Arfield! He's been threatening that recently, and all the Burnley players run to the Darwin end.
Burnley win the next ball. It's Rory now. On the outside, decent.
Barnes! He got it! Ashley Barnes with it! What a cross from Rory! And there was Ashley Barnes! And Burnley leading the derby.
Knocks it quickly. Finds Benson in space at the byline. Can Burnley get a goal here? Back for Brownell. Saved by the keeper!
Burnley won it to the end! That is magnificent! They deserve that!
On it by Paul Teller. Off for a hat-trick.
He's got it! Hat-trick for Nathan Teller! Oh, he's on fire at the minute! 3-0 Burnley!
It's Nathan Teller's day. And Burnley are 3 up here. Fantastic derby. Here's Benson. Can he go on the outside? Comes inside. Top shot.
Oh, the goal! Manuel Benson once more! That is top class!
Burnley have done it. Fantastic. Clarence deserve the championship title. They've been the best side throughout the campaign. Burnley have won the second tier. What a fantastic achievement. The players have been magnificent.
Yes, hello everybody and welcome along to the latest episode of Turfcast Podcast pre-game show with me, Joe Redmond, ahead of our midweek clash against Wolves at Turf Moor this coming Tuesday. And as you can see, we're joined as ever by Wolves fan Dave. How you doing, mate?
I'm keeping well, mate. Thank you. Yeah, looking well. I was going to say happy to have the Premier League football back after the international break, but we didn't have a great weekend. But now looking forward to it. I'm having my first trip to Turf Moor this week, so yeah, should be good.
Is it really? I didn't know that. I presumed you'd been up for a while because I know you get to quite a lot of the games.
For some reason, it's just one of the ones that I've never done, and I thought this season I want to try and tick off the ones that I've not done. So yeah, first trip tomorrow.
Fair enough. I'll have to message me on WhatsApp. Let me know where you are. But before we get started, as always, this episode of Turfcast is sponsored by Green King Sport, where football is more than a game. The league season is entering the business end, and Green King Sport venues are showing every single every single televised Burnley fixture over the running, with more than 900 sports pubs across the UK. It doesn't matter where you're based, you can catch every single minute of the action, and football is best enjoyed with your mates. So if you're not at the ground this month, get the text in the group chat and head to your local Green King Sports venue to catch the game. Also, don't forget to download the Green King Sport app and enjoy exclusive competitions and discounts whenever there's a game on. Right, Dave, your season so far, because I think it's fair to say, I mean, from the outside looking in, I look at it and I see, well, Wolves have exceeded expectations this year because there was a lot of talk, obviously, when Lopetegui left you in the lurch just a week before the season or whenever it was, there was a lot of talk of you going down. But you were quite confident. Obviously, we did that Sky Bet thing at the start of the season, didn't we? And you were like, we'll be fine. Like, I remember you were just chilling in that chair. It's like, it's all this noise, we'll be absolutely fine. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, mate. But obviously, you've been absolutely fine. And for you probably expected this, or have they exceeded your expectations as well?
They have a little bit. I think, obviously, because at the time, then when we did the Sky thing, Lopetegui was still in charge at that point. And then when he'd obviously gone, I think everyone was like, yeah, the Wolves are done. They're going down regardless.
Yeah.
So I thought, again, even when Gary O'Neill was appointed, I thought our squad is more than strong enough to stay in the Premier League, but it could be a long season. You know, we could be in a position that, you know, the likes of the Forests or whatever are in, so, you know, keep getting dragged in and pulling ourselves out and getting dragged in again. But, you know, we've done very well, you know, picked up, you know, at home especially, we've had a really, really good run of form. You know, been really strong. We've beaten some decent sides, you know, beating Spurs this season, got the double over Spurs, double over Chelsea, beating Man City, you know, so we've had some really, really good performances and results. So, we've struggled a lot with injuries, as many teams have. I think that's our main issue at the moment. We've just got no quality in the attacking areas. So the last couple of weeks have been a little bit, you know, frustrating and losing out in the FA Cup. But ultimately, we're I think the club, but just say to Gary O'Neill at the start of the season, keep us in the Premier League. And, you know, I'm fairly certain he's going to do that now anyway.
Yeah, I think just get the league table up very quickly. I think you're 10th at the minute, aren't you, on 41 points? So yeah, there's no chance us and Luton, for example, are getting more than 20 points, mate. You'll be completely fine. Well, talk to me about Gary O'Neill then, because I don't know how you felt about it at the time, but I seem to remember Wolves fans being a little bit underwhelmed. He did well at Bournemouth and was sacked and when he shouldn't have been. Obviously, they wanted to go in a different direction, which is fair enough. They've been relatively okay this season, so I guess they could say that decision was justified. But the underwhelming appointment, but he's obviously gone on to do very, very well. What's he like as a manager?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when he was first appointed, everyone was really underwhelmed by it. I think you've gone from Lopetegui, who obviously, left the club in a disappointing position with how he left, but he was a Europa League winner ultimately, and a world class manager. And you've gone from that to Gary O'Neill, who, like you said, had done well at Bournemouth, but less than a season's experience as a first team manager. I think Wolves fans were worried about that, but he surprised us all. He had a shaky start, but sort of settled on a shape that he was happy with the current squad, and we've just gone from strength to strength. And I think even as a manager, the way he talks about the club and talks about the players, you can see him how he's improved and matured, as the season goes on. So there's a lot of issues at the moment, like I mentioned earlier, with injuries, and none of the frustration is going towards Gary O'Neill. I think people are appreciating the job that he's done. Yeah. And even when we lose games, a lot of the frustration goes straight to the manager, and it's not in this case. So at the moment, things, touch wood, are all going well. I have no doubt there'll be some rumours about his future in the summer with other clubs, possibly, maybe even the England job. I don't know, but I think as long as we back him a little bit, it could be an interesting season next year under him with a bit of money behind him, squad where he wants it to be. And we'll see where we go next year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I remember seeing something about Man United and stuff like that. You've mentioned there, England. I mean, it might be a bit soon for him in his managerial career, but I think everyone's been linked with a Man United job. I think just on his tactics, is it fair to say he's more of a defensive manager? Because I'm just looking at a lot of your fixtures here, and there's a lot of tight games in there. You've mentioned the Wolves one already. That were 2-1. There's a lot of 1-0s in there as well. Obviously, 1-0 earlier against us in the season, 1-0 against Sheffield United. There is some random results in there, like 4-2 at Chelsea, 4-3, a 4-1 against Brentford as well. But a lot of the victories are narrow 1-goal victories. Is he a bit of a reserved manager? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think counter-attacking is the way he wants to play as well. So it was. I felt the game against Burnley at home was quite an interesting one because we had to rely on like an error from you guys to take the lead, and I can remember the second half being quite a long second half. But I think when teams like to play the same as we do, like playing deep, and we like playing deep, when we're allowed the ball, we're not as effective. But saying that, now we haven't got the pace as a counter-attacking team at the moment. We've got Neto out, Hwang out, Cunha's out, although Cunha might be back for this game. Got no pace going forward, so he's had to sort of compromise a little bit, rely on the wing backs a little bit more. But yeah, predominantly we are a team that likes to sit deep for straight teams. So it's rare that there's many goals in the games between Wolves and their opposition.
You mentioned some injuries there. You mentioned Neto out, Hwang out. Obviously, I'm just looking at premierinjuries.com that they're both ruled out on there as well. You've got Craig Dawson, who's currently unlikely to play. Is it Bellegarde and Cunha as well? Yeah. You just mentioned Cunha. Is there any other injury news that's not on there that players could be missing or suspended?
I think they're the main ones, really. I think Cunha's the big one. I think he should be back in some capacity. I don't think he'll start against Burnley, but I think he'll probably be on the bench tomorrow. But the others definitely out. I think Neto could be out for the season. Hwang's still a few weeks away. So Cunha's going to be a big plus. We've been having to play a couple of young lads up front. The last 3 games we've played, 221 lads that have never played senior football before this year. So, and they're not ready. They're not nowhere near ready. So at the moment, going forward for Wolves, goals is a little bit of a concern because we just don't know where they're going to come from.
Yeah, well, obviously, Hwang got the goal against us in the earlier game that we've obviously briefly referenced as well. You've been on not a slump as much. I from the outside looking in, before I checked at your form, I thought, Wolves are not as good as they were early in the season. But in the Premier League, you've won 3 out of your last 5. So you are still doing relatively well. How have these injuries affected you? Because obviously last time out against Villa was pretty poor. A convincing 2-0 win for Villa. You have lost to Coventry in that run as well, which isn't in there. But how are these injuries affecting Wolves at the minute?
They keep coming in like different spells. So I think the Fulham game was a big one because Neto had come off injured in that game. I think Cunha was already injured as well. And obviously we had no Hwang. So it was like a real makeshift team. We had the young lad on up front, Nathan Fraser, and Mario Lemina ended up playing out as a left winger. and he was unbelievable, Lamina, that game. And Gary O'Neill sort of stuck with it ever since against Coventry and against Villa, and it just hasn't worked as well since. So they've just, they've just dragged themselves through it. I don't think the Fulham game was vintage, and it wasn't the best that we've played this season. But Gary O'Neill said it was one of his favourite wins of the season, because I think if you gave him that team at the start of the game, you would have probably said he had no hope to win. Yeah. And they dragged themselves through it. So I think that's the only thing helping us at the moment, sort of the team spirit and the momentum that Gary O'Neill had as a manager with this squad. The issue is now that as soon as we lost in that Coventry game, we threw it away, 2 late goals.
Yeah, that such a good game for the neutral, by the way.
Yeah, no, the whole FA Cup weekend as a neutral was brilliant. But then there were a lot of fans saying, right, I think our season's done now. We're just going to go into this slump now where we might pick up another couple of wins. But so that's the concern, really, that because that momentum's gone, where it's going to come from. And Hwang's still a few weeks away, so we're probably not going to have him back till May. So Cunha's the only one, really. We're just holding on and hoping that he's as good as he was before he got injured, basically.
I do like to ask what your ambitions for the season are. And I'm just looking at the league table, as I mentioned earlier. You're 10th on 41 points, so you're above Chelsea, just below Brighton, Newcastle and West Ham. People always talk about West Ham, Newcastle and Brighton as being in the battle for Europe, but you are 1 point behind Brighton. So surely you count yourselves as in that battle for Europe, and that's got to be your ambition for the season, maybe sneaking into the Conference League.
I would love it, yeah. I mean, that we're in the conversation for sure, but because of the things that I've just mentioned, and we've got quite a difficult run, I just think I would be very, very surprised if we end up there, to be honest. Although I would love that, as an ambition, yeah, definitely. That'd be great. And we can get it. But I think with our injuries, with the quality of the teams above us, and with our fixtures, I can't see it happening. I think we've still got to play. Still got to play Arsenal, still got to play Liverpool, still got to play City. So, we've got a tough run in, and I can't see it happening personally. But look, like I said earlier, we're still in a much better position than what I think a lot of people expected us to be in.
Yeah, definitely. I always like to get people's opinions on Burnley, and obviously you've been on the show a million times, so people are probably sick of sort of like your thoughts. But obviously the position that they're in at the minute in the relegation battle, obviously we have been helped slightly by points deductions. Let's not get away from that, but who cares? They shouldn't have overspent. It is their own problem. But we were 11, 12 points away from safety like 3 weeks ago. We're now properly back in the mix, just 4 points away. We've still got to play yourselves at home. We've got to play Brighton at home. We've got to play Newcastle at home and Forest at home, Everton away. We are back in it. A lot of Burnley fans are starting to get not excited, because you've got to be realistic as well. We haven't been great this season. Nobody's pretending we have been, but we haven't been great this season. But just 4 points at this stage of the season, when you have winnable home games, you've got to count anybody outside the top 6 as a winnable home game. That's, well, the big 6, should I say, as a winnable home game. And we've got a few of them coming up. Yeah, there are tough games in there, like I've just said, Newcastle, Brighton and Wolves, all within the top half. Everton away as well. We do tend to get murdered against Daesh teams. And I guess that sort of setup as well and set pieces, so it'll be interesting. But we're properly back in the mix now, aren't we? And do you think Burnley can do it, or do you think it's just a little bit too late? Because there's 8 games left, and we probably have to win at the very minimum 3, probably 4, and we've won 4 all season. So it's 50. That's 100% of the games you've won already. You've got to win within 8 games. When you mention it like that, despite my optimism and excitement, it does sound unrealistic, doesn't it?
Mate, stranger things have happened. I think it generally could come down to stuff like goal difference at the end of the season, and obviously yours isn't fantastic. But to be fair, I never realised, the obviously how close it is now. Look, I would love Forest to go down. I would love teams like Forest to go down, and even Everton if they get dragged into it. I think Everton are probably, they've got a game in hand with a couple of teams and still 3 points clear.
Got some
so
very winnable home games of Everton.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think like some of the games you mentioned there are winnable. I think the games that we've got Forest as well, I think away in a couple of weeks' time. So I think you will have to rely on favours, but ultimately I think you've got a good squad of players. And Company, did a fantastic job for you last year. I'd assume he'll stay put regardless of whether, go down or stay up. So I think next year you'll be in a position, if you do go down, to come straight back up, although easier said than done. But again, even for a neutral, if you can make this a bit interesting and drag Forest into it and possibly, I didn't even realise Brentford was so, I know, they got a 5-point cushion. I didn't realise they were down there. So
yeah,
it's a big ask, but Who knows, mate? Who knows?
You say you want Forest to go down. We've got them on the last day of the season. So
Oh,
if we're within
wow.
touching distance,
That'd be
if we're like
brilliant.
2 points behind Forest, and it's at home as well, then fingers crossed. But also Chris Wood plays for Forest and he's very good in the air. So
We've not had that for a while, have we? In the Prem, where when we were back in the Mick McCarthy days, they used to have like the Super Sunday or whatever, and there was like 3 teams that could still go down on the last day. But I can't remember the last time that's happened in the Premier League, where you genuinely don't know when it's going to happen on the last day. So
I can't remember what happened last year because I didn't pay too much attention to it, obviously being in the Championship. But the year before, it was us and Leeds on the last day, weren't it? And
was it? Yeah.
We lost at home to Newcastle. They beat Brentford away. Thanks, Brentford. Hence staying up. If they'd have lost against Brentford, which I think the season after they beat them 5-0 like at home, then we'd have stayed up. But unfortunately, we blew it thanks to Nathan Collins, who did a stupid handball in the earlier parts of the game. You mentioned Company there as well. I always like to get people's thoughts on him. What are your thoughts on him as a manager? Obviously, still relatively young. I always like to compare him to myself because I'm 36. I think he's also 36. So it just shows how young he actually is. But he's an up-and-coming manager doing relatively well. Obviously struggled this season. But yeah, I think as you said earlier, he will still be here next season unless he decides to walk. But obviously we won't be sacking him. I think that's fair to say, unless we lose every single game between now and the end of the season 5-0. But what are your thoughts on Vincent Kompany as a manager and Burnley sticking by him despite this season?
No, I think fair play to the club for sticking by him as well. I think it shows almost how much credit he had in the bank. I think there would have been a lot of clubs that sort of pulled the trigger a lot earlier than this. I think he's, I think Man City, I think long term, people think Steven Gerrard, if he does all right in the Premier, he'll end up going to Liverpool. And Vincent Kompany, if he does all right in the Premier, he'll end up going to Man City. And I don't think it will work out quite as straightforward as that. But I think if he can, Burnley, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way to you guys. Obviously, there's money there to spend possibly now, especially if you stay up. But there's always going to be, and it'll be the same with Wolves, I say, there's always going to be a limit, I think, there with how high and, how well these teams can do, especially with how the financial fair play or whatever keeps changing. So I think for him, he's just got to show the rest of the footballing world what he can do. I think everybody expected Burnley probably to do slightly better with how well he did in the Championship last year. I think we expected, you boys to come in and just probably be sitting around mid-table so far this season. It's not quite gone to plan. So I don't know, mate. If he can somehow find the quality now in the last 8 games of the season, I think people, he deserves a lot of credit if he can get you from where you were to staying in the Premier League. I think fair play.
I know we've already referenced that Sky Bet thing, but I was very confident when I was sat there and I was like, Burnley will surprise a few people this year. Of course we will. And I think one of the answers was, out of the 3 promoted teams, Burnley the most likely to stay. I'm like, of course we are. What stupid thing to say. And how Luton have been like so much better than us, really. Well, actually, you look at it now and they're not. They've been dreadful, but up until Christmas, they were so much better than us. Just before we carry on, I just want to say thank you to all the YouTube channel members. You can see the names rolling on the bottom of your screen now. We did have a new member yesterday, and I've not added his or her name yet. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was Milltown Dingle, I think. But we'll get that added soon, mate. Thank you very much. But if you do want to join the channel, you could just see underneath, there's like a join button. Click that. If that's not there, just go into the description. There's a link there. You can join there. Dave, obviously, we've spoke about your injuries already. How are you expecting Wolves to set up with all these injuries? Are you expecting some of these youngsters to be lining up against us again?
Possibly, yeah. I think Gary O'Neill will probably try and go with a similar side that I think started against the Villa. Probably Cunha will try and come back in. Like I said, I'll be surprised if he starts. He might do, but he was left out completely against Villa. So I would be very surprised if he starts, but I think he'll be on the bench. So I think it wouldn't surprise me if he's unchanged. We actually played okay against Aston Villa, just lacked any sort of goal for it, to be honest. Yeah. So really the front 3 was, we had the young lad, Leon Chiwome, he started up front, Pablo Sarabia, and then he played Lamina again on the left wing. Whereas I would try and play Lamina centrally, win that midfield battle a little bit more. But yeah, it's not our strongest team. Genuinely, I think Burnley do have a shot tomorrow at getting all 3 points.
Yeah, well, I'm in the thought process of now we've got this momentum behind us. You might be on the beach a little bit. Obviously, you've spoken about already that yes, you could probably get in the conversation and slip into the European places, but probably because of the injuries, you might mentally in the back of your players' minds be thinking, let's just get to the end of the season, we're safe. A rocking Turf Moor, it's not been rocking too much this season, I will be honest, but if we get a rocking Turf Moor under the lights, start well, everybody behind the boys, I think we can go on and win it. You've mentioned some of these young players playing up front. What are they like then? Have you got some good youngsters coming through? Do we need to be worried about some of these players that we won't know much about?
I don't necessarily think you need to be worried. Look, I think they've got quality and potential, but in terms of current ability, I don't think they're anywhere near the Premier League standard, to be completely honest. I think, like I said earlier on, Nathan Fraser, who's played there more, he had a couple of games and chances in the Cups earlier on this season, but not really been brilliant in at Premier League level. Leon Chiwomi as well, the same. He came off the bench against Coventry. I was surprised to see him start yesterday on Saturday, against the Villa. But he's an England under-18s international. Scored for England under-18s during the international break. So shows that he's got the quality there. But really, both of them need a good season-long loan next year. They're not up to Premier League standard as of yet. So they might surprise me tomorrow, mate. I don't know. They might, come good. But for me, there's not a huge amount for Burnley to worry about with either of those, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Who's your main threat at the minute then? Because obviously all the main players, Neto and Chang, are all injured. So who's the main one to be worried about for us at the minute?
If Cunha is involved, I think he'll have a point to prove as well. But Ryan Ait-Nouri, but I think both wingbacks, Semedo and Ait-Nouri, are proving, tricky customers that, they can provide a little bit going forward. Pablo Sarabia is sort of the main man at the moment that we're looking towards for some sort of creativity. But with Pablo, he just doesn't, you can tell he doesn't seem to trust these young players. The young lads make a run and Pablo Sarabia almost ignores them and so on. It's a little bit frustrating for the fans. But our midfield, João Gomez is a brilliant defensive midfielder, made his Brazil debut against England. Lamina as well when he turns up. But there's quality there. But just going forward, it's just we're really lacking any sort of quality in front of goal over the last few weeks.
That's interesting because I'd say our defence, up until the last few games when Muric has been back in, has been one of our weakest areas. So if you're struggling up front, then that could be something that could play into our hands a little bit here in the game coming up. But obviously we've got just before we carry on, I want to remind everybody that we have exciting news to bring you from Uphold, Burnley's sleeve sponsor for the 23-24 season and a supporter of Turfcast podcast. Uphold have launched the new limited edition Burnley Uphold card, giving fans a chance to show their support home and away. The card is free and comes with a host of benefits, including the ability to spend in any currency anywhere in the world, where MasterCard is accepted with no foreign transaction fees, a competitive exchange rate, and easy integration with Google or Apple Pay. Get your card today at uphold.com/BurnleyFC. But that's not all. When fans use their card for the first time, Uphold will donate £5 to Burnley in the community, supporting the Burnley family both on and off the pitch. Numbers are limited. So again, visit www.uphold.com/BurnleyFC and get your card today. Terms and conditions apply. Apologies there. The dog did run in the room. So I just thought, I don't know what to do here. I'm going to panic and read an ad read. I need to get it done. So thankfully he'd left by that point. But yeah, just want to get into some predictions then, Dave. And you said you think Burnley will have a shot. As Burnley fans, we were talking about it on the full-time show yesterday. And yes, we are getting a little bit ahead of ourselves and no one's underestimating Wolves. But because of the momentum that we're building, aware of the injuries that you've got, the fact that we have finally dropped Trafford and put Muric in, we do look a lot better defensively because of that. And we've got Cullen in the middle as well, pulling the strings. He's missed a lot of the season just because he was dropped and company never brought him back in, really. But yeah, we do look a lot better at the minute. And I'm looking forward to this game. Like I said, it's Turf Moor, it's under the lights, hopefully a good atmosphere. We need to get behind the boys, and I'm thinking 2-0 Burnley. That's what I've gone for. What are you thinking, mate?
Like I said, I think it could be a long game for Wolves. Like we have got the quality there, but ultimately, I don't know. We're not going to know until around sort of 7 o'clock, 7:15 tomorrow, what the team's going to look like for Wolves.
Yeah.
So if Cunha's in and starting, I think we've got a shot. But if not, I just think we might scrape through and grab a point. But genuinely, I do have. This is probably the first game in a while that I think the opposition team have got a decent chance here of getting all 3 points. So I think Burnley, and the way your form's improved, I think it could be just a goal either way. But 2-1 maybe. to Burnley, or I'd take a point, I think, tomorrow.
It's interesting that, because we've been so bad all season, and the fact that somebody's come onto this channel and been like, "Oh, Burnley worry me a little bit tomorrow." It's something that hasn't really happened this season, but our form has improved. And yeah, obviously you've got your injuries and 2 of your best players are out, so there is that. But we've got to capitalise now. I think if we go into tomorrow and then lose it, it's just all the momentum and the excitement, it'll just be completely popped out of us. Like, we have to minimum avoid defeat tomorrow, but we should really be winning one of the next 2 games. We've got yourselves, then we've got Everton, then we've got Sheffield United. We've got to be winning, I think, 2 out of them to be within any chance.
In a great position after those 3 games, to be fair.
Exactly.
Really good position, yeah.
We've got to put ourselves in a good position. These 3 games are massive. Imagine if we win all 3, we will be absolutely buzzing. Like, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. We've won 4 games all season, and then we've got 3 games in a row, and I'm like, imagine if we win all 3. Probably won't happen, but fingers crossed it does. Obviously, we'll start wrapping it up there, mate. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you and digest your content before we wrap it up?
Yeah, so it's Talking Walls. We're on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and we'll later on we'll have the Burnley preview out as well. So give my thoughts ahead of it, and then we'll have Joe's thoughts as well. So yeah, if you want to check us out, brilliant, and yeah, appreciate you having me back on, mate. And all the best for the rest of the season. Fingers crossed we're talking again next year, anyway.
Fingers crossed, mate. If not, we'll get each other in cup, and who knows, we could serve up another absolute great game like you and Coventry did. I am a bit gutted you lost that, to be honest, mate. I'm not the biggest fan of Coventry after some of the stuff that went on last season. But mate, thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
You've been on the show probably more than anybody else, apart from myself and the Turfcast, obviously, panel. But I do appreciate you coming on, mate. And I hope you enjoy the turf tomorrow and enjoy where you go for a beer and stuff like that. Like I said, drop us a message. But thank you for coming on, mate. It's been a pleasure. Good luck for the rest of the season.
Cheers, buddy. Thank you.